All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating argument, one that claims today's political fights actually go all the way back to a deep question in Christian theology. It's a wild ride, so let's get into it. So, right out of the gate, the source material throws us into this pretty intense clash of ideas. It starts with a quote, a really strong condemnation of war, from a fictional pope, Leo XIV. And boom, just like that, the author puts two completely opposite worldviews side by side. You've got this idea of a God who refuses war, who won't even listen to the prayers of warriors, and then you have a prayer asking God to guide bullets to their targets. You can already see the deep fundamental conflict here, right? It's all about faith and violence. So you might be thinking, what in the world does a 2,000-year-old debate have to do with politics today? It's a fair question. And according to the author, the whole thing hinges on two key theological ideas. You really got to get these two concepts to understand where he's going with all this. Okay, first up is something called the sword command. Now that sounds pretty warlike, doesn't it? But the author makes a really important point here. The mainstream interpretation isn't that this was a call to violence at all. No, it was symbolic. It was about fulfilling a prophecy, not about giving a thumbs up to fighting. And that distinction, it's absolutely crucial for the rest of the argument. And the second big idea is this concept of the great apostasy. Basically, it's the idea that there was a major falling away from the original teachings of Christianity. Now, I want you to file that one away. Just put it in your back pocket, because the author brings it back with a vengeance right at the end. It's the big payoff. All right, so we've got theology. How does that connect to, of all things, the American idea of rights? Well, this right here. This is the heart of the whole piece. The author is drawing a straight, unbroken line from one very specific Christian doctrine directly to the concept of individual freedom. And believe it or not, the starting point for this whole thing, it's the doctrine of the Trinity, the idea of God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now, for the author, this isn't just some abstract religious concept. No, it's the philosophical launchpad. It's the one-of-a-kind idea that makes everything else possible. Okay, so let's walk through the logic here step by step. The author lays it out like this. You start with the triune God, this model of unity and diversity. From there, you get this beautiful marriage of divine reason, or logos, with divine wisdom, or sophos. And that, he says, gives us the basis for the imago Dei, the idea that we humans are made in God's image with a rational soul. You following so far? Because from that one idea, this concept of a rational soul, that's where the whole notion of inalienable rights comes from. Rights given by a creator, not by any government. So what's the big takeaway? The author's point is that this specific theological chain of reasoning is what makes the American idea of rights so, well, unique. It's the simple but profound idea that your rights don't come from a king or a parliament, they come from a creator. And that, he argues, sets it apart from pretty much every other political philosophy out there. Okay, so now that we have that foundation, the author pivots. He takes this historical framework and uses it to look at our world today, at modern secular ideas about rights. And what he sees is a massive, fundamental shift away from that original concept. And this is where things get really interesting, because the author frames the modern debate as a clash between two totally different kinds of rights. On one hand, you have negative rights. Think of it like a do not enter sign for the government. They limit what the government can do to you. Freedom of speech is a classic example. But on the other hand, you have what he calls positive rights. These are things the government is supposed to give you, like a right to housing or a right to a job. And the author's argument is pretty stark. He says that this shift toward positive rights always leads to a bigger government and less individual freedom. So where does he see this happening? He points directly at things like the UN's Agenda 2030. From his point of view, these kinds of initiatives completely flip the script. Suddenly, the focus isn't on the individual soul anymore. It's on the group, or even the planet. He even argues that it puts the idea of non-human sentience on the same level as a human soul. And in that kind of system, he says, individual liberty isn't a fixed thing anymore. It's something that can be traded away for what someone else decides is the greater good. And that brings us right back to where we started. All that abstract theology we talked about at the beginning, well, here's the payoff. The author connects it directly to the political and even religious battles we're seeing play out all around us right now. So what's the author's ultimate conclusion? It's a heavy one. He argues that what we're witnessing today, this shift away from those founding ideas, isn't just a simple political disagreement. It's not just left versus right. Remember that term we put in our back pocket, the Great Apostasy? Well, he pulls it out right here. He's framing this entire cultural moment as a modern Great Apostasy, a massive turning away from the very theological bedrock that, in his eyes, made America possible to begin with.